Okay. It's no secret to all of you out there that I'm Chinese. I said it in the first episode, and you watched the first episode. But for all of you that aren't Chinese, you're probably wondering what are some of the pros and cons of being Chinese, specifically around the holidays when it relates to family. I'm 3/8 Chinese, and this is 3/8 pros and cons. Oh! Pro. My grandparents grew up in China at a time where food was rationed, so there's always too much food in a good way. Con. One of the foods is a dessert called Dan Tat. It's an egg tart, and eating it is like eating an omelet in a pie crust with 8 packets of sugar added. Basically, if you've ever eaten a quiche and thought, my God, this quiche isn't nearly sweet enough, then you'll like it. But I don't, and in my opinion, eggs should never be in desserts. Pro. My grandparents tell stories about their lives, which is fun to hear, like how they met as the only 2 Chinese people at their Christian college. Con. They tell you these stories while offering you a dessert called grass jelly, which is like bitter jello made of mint and grass. And you guessed it, it's just as appetizing as it sounds. Pro. When we play games like Catchphrase, where you have to describe things in detail, my grandma has a very unique way of describing things. For example, the word she was given was tombstone, and she started describing the mausoleum of President Ulysses S. Grant. She did not realize it was a timed game and lost. Con. That same year, she brought the dessert almond jello cubes and cocktail fruit, which is, I'm assuming, what killed Ulysses S. Grant. Pro. When it's Chinese New Year, my family gives us small red envelopes that are filled with cash. Con. Also on Chinese New Year, my family gives us a disgusting dessert called a moon cake. At first, when you're eating it, you're shocked how dry a thing could be that isn't sand. But hey, it doesn't taste that bad. Then you take a big sip of water and you realize you only couldn't taste it because your mouth was so dry. Then you taste the mooncake surprise, which is that the manufacturers have put a hard-boiled salted duck egg yolk into the middle of the cake. You know what an already dry dessert doesn't need? A powdery, greenish, yellow, hard-boiled egg yolk. I said it once, I'll say it again, eggs should not be in desserts. Pro. My grandparents always have a blue tin of butter cookies at their house. Con. That tin is actually filled with sewing equipment. Pro. When it's a special occasion, we eat hot pot, which is a way of cooking stuff in soup. Con. There is a Chinese dessert that is dessert soup. And it is the worst thing ever. Essentially, it's a sweet, sweet liquid that has floating chunks of fruit, tapioca, and sometimes fungus in it. How are these things able to float on the top of the soup, you ask? Well, the consistency of the sweet broth is that of ejaculate. Some of the times I've had it, it's hot. And sometimes it's room temperature, but every single time it's the consistency of cum. Okay? If you see this soup or it's offered to you, do not try it. And finally, red bean buns. Now this is the one Chinese dessert that I like, okay? Even though it looks pretty plain from the outside, inside there's a delicious sweet red bean filling. And the only downside of the dessert is that it's a plain looking bun, so it's hard to tell, like, you know, how much filling's in it or like what kind of filling's in it. So sometimes I'll take a bite of it and all of a sudden it's hard-boiled egg yolk. Okay? Why do you put egg yolks in your desserts? Okay? So anytime you want to come to my holidays, you're welcome to do that. All right. I'll see you next time.